Merhaba, ben Orkun Yazgan, Çevre TV ekranlarına hoş geldiniz. Bugün önemli bir gün, 2 Haziran Perşembe günü. Bundan 50 yıl önce dünyanın çevre konulu, çevre başlıklı ilk konferansı İsveç'te, İsveç'in başkenti Stockholm'de 1972 yılında düzenlendi. İlk çevre konferansının üzerinden 50 yıl geçti ve 50. yıl dönümünde, doğum gününde İsveç'te yine Stockholm'de Stockholm artı 50 konferansı var. Sabah saatlerinde başladı toplantılar, görüşmeler. Konferans tüm hızıyla devam ediyor. Hem konferansla ilgili bilgiler almak hem İsveç'in özellikle çevre politikaları, Avrupa Yeşil Mutabakatı buna yaklaşımını da öğrenmek ve konuşmak için Ankara'ya, İsveç'in Ankara Büyükelçiliğine, Türkiye Büyükelçiliğine gidiyoruz. Bundan sonrası İngilizce olarak devam edecek. Staffan Herrstrom'la birlikteyiz. Dear Ambassador, welcome to our program. Good morning.
Very much. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Hoş geldiniz. Biz teşekkür ederiz. So this is a very special day, as you know. After 50 years, this is the anniversary. We can say happy birthday for the special conference. Namely, the name of the first conference is United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. And this is accepted as the first environmental conference in the world. After 50 years, today just started. We are in the plenary meeting now. It will go on today and tomorrow, and the name of the conference is Stockholm Plus 50. But before coming today, could you please talk about the historical background of the first conference, sir?
Yes, this was an initiative taken by the Swedish government at the time, and I remember it very well. I was a teenager at the time, and it was initiated, Prime Minister Palme and government, against the background of a growing realization, which I remember as well during particularly the 60s, that we were, as humanity, and we still are, ruining our future.
It's a big problem in the voice. So could you please do it again from the link, and I'll be waiting for you for your effort. Okay. Evet, Herrstrom'un sesinde bir minik problem var. Öncesinde provada yoktu ama ben biraz konferanstan bahsetmeye devam edeyim. Sonradan yeniden. Bu arada canlı görüntüler geliyor Stockholm artı 50'den. A healthy planet for the prosperity of all, our responsibility, our opportunity. Sağlıklı bir gezegen, bizim sorumluluğumuz ve bizim fırsatlarımız şeklinde sloganlarla başladı. Konuşmalar yapılıyor. Oldukça yoğun bir program var. Hem bugün hem de yarın. Az önce Büyükelçi ile de konuştuğumuz gibi ki az sonra yeniden birlikte olacağız. Ankara'ya gideceğiz. Bağlantıda bir minik sorun oldu. Kulaklık da kullanabilirse arkadaşlarıma hatırlatıyorum. Daha da sağlıklı olacaktır. Şimdi altyazıyı alalım. 1972 yılında ilk dünyada çevre başlıklı ilk konferans düzenlendi Stockholm'da, İsveç'te. 1972 yılı, 50 yıl geçti üzerinden ve bugün uzun zamandan beri İsveç, UNDP ile Birleşmiş Milletler'le beraber bu organizasyonun duyurularını da yapıyor. Hatta son olarak İstanbul Başkonsolosluğu'nda bir etkinlikle bu toplantıyı, bu konferansı olan önemi anlattılar, aktardılar. Biz de davetli olarak gitmiştik. İsveç'in başkonsolosu, İstanbul Başkonsolosu Büyükelçi Eriksson bilgiler vermişti. UNDP'den yine mukim temsilci Winton'un yine bilgileri vardı. Dünyanın gözü kulağı burada, İsveç'te, Stockholm'de. Hem 50. yılı olması itibariyle bir sembolik önemi var. Hem de yine akademisyenlerin, sivil toplum temsilcilerinin, dünya liderlerinin, yöneticilerin katıldığı bir toplantıda dünyanın çevre konulu, çevre başlıklı sorunları masaya yatırılıyor. Şu anda canlı olarak sosyal medya platformlarından, Birleşmiş Milletler'in yapılan yayından size ekranlara geliyor. Oldukça yoğun bir gündem var. Hem bu gündemi hem de tarihi geçmişini konuşmak için Ankara'da Büyükelçi ile birlikteyiz yeniden. Sanırım bağlantı tekrar kuruldu. Evet, dear Mr. Ambassador, welcome again. I was talking about the history and all. So my first question will be about the historical background of the first conference, sir, please.
Yes. Well, the idea behind the conference was coming from the Swedish government and Prime Minister Olof Palme at the time, and it was initiated against the background of particularly the 60s, when I think there was a growing realization all over the world that we had started to endanger our future through pollution, through chemicals that were killing animals and poisoning the nature, that we were also destroying the nature we had around us by spreading waste. Obviously, some of the major threats that we see around us now were not that clearly identified at the time, but it was clear that we needed to act globally, and that was the idea, to use the United Nations, formed by all of us, by humanity, to address our common problems and concerns, to use United Nations as a kind of vehicle to make change happen. So that was the background. I mean, there were during the 60s there were civil society organizations formed or energized in many countries, which sort of added to the public opinion, making these types of initiatives very much requested and initiated.
Yes, as you mentioned, those were the first steps of the humanity for the environmental problems. So after 50 years, we are together again in Sweden, in Stockholm. It's a very special day, as I mentioned. Before we go with today's conference, we have the message for the conference of the King of Sweden. We can see it now is coming. The message of the King of Sweden is coming now, and I'll be reading that. Okay. His Majesty, King of Sweden, Gustav, is saying, "We do not have 50 more years to turn development around. Time is running out. If we want to limit the threat to our civilization, the next few years will be critical. We have the knowledge, we have the tools. Now is the time to use them." This is the message from His Majesty, Okay. Those are the first meetings now. First speakers are on the scene, just started today. So there's an intensive program. So who are the participants? How is the daily program? What are the objectives of the conference, sir?
I think the primary objective is to speed up action, to make sure that the commitments that already have been made, I mean, through the Paris Agreement on climate change, in the Convention to Protect Biodiversity, a lot of commitments have been made by countries all over the world, but we are not acting fast enough. And additionally, we are, of course, not acting with high ambition enough. And there's certainly the process is ongoing. The regular climate conferences where countries are negotiating, showing what they are doing against climate change, and encouraging each other to step up the ambitions. And those efforts are ongoing, but we need to use the Stockholm Plus 50 meeting now to make sure, first of all, that we speed up, that the action plan that taken is happening, and finding ways to be acting more rapidly. And secondly, we need also to see that these issues are interlinked. The loss of biodiversity negatively affects global warming, and what we also see, the pollution of the oceans that are important carbon sinks, that's also adding to climate change. So in the Stockholm Plus 50 setting, we are addressing all these issues in a sort of coherent way. And the program, here we have participants from over 100 countries all over the world, governments obviously, but we're also engaging civil society organizations, private sector, and there is a particular focus on youth, and I think that makes sense. I mean, I'm the father of two daughters, now being around 30, and this is two daughters as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is certainly something that they feel. One of them is even working actively on this professionally, on environment and climate change, and we need not only to say in general terms that this is for coming generations. We need to listen to a young generation. We need to speed up, because they are telling us, and they are to do so, and they are right.
Yeah. Stockholm Plus 50 conference just started today, this morning, and I want to read some of the names of the meetings, labels of the meetings. For example, action towards green and blue financing, green and climate resilient transformation of agri-food system. By the way, those are the live coverage from the meeting now. Another session, well-being economies. So improving sustainable development, which is very important, sir. Conversations, generations of climate change shapers. Waste management, it's very important subjects again. Young people leading the COVID-19 response and recovery. A common daily agenda for future generations. Stockholm Plus 50 scientific report. So there are academicians, scientists, representatives from all over the world. So how is the reaction of the world leaders to that special meeting, conference, sir?
My impression is that the initiative is clearly welcomed, and this approach that has been chosen, I mean, leadership dialogues and the engagement of young people, those are examples of the kind of approach that I think many of us all around the world feel it's the right way to act. But I think first and foremost, it's essential that we try to also bridge the differences that we have seen in negotiating the fight against global warming, not least, where I think developing countries sometimes have felt that developed countries, like my own, that we, from one point of view, historically have contributed a lot to climate change, but we haven't done enough in terms of supporting them. And you mentioned financing. I think climate financing, that's an essential element here. We made a promise to mobilize, I think it was $100 billion to 2020, and the world hasn't yet, and rich countries in particular, haven't yet delivered on this. So we need to use these kinds of fora to bridge also the different views, and to create confidence that eventually will make progress in the negotiations more achievable.
Okay. Sir, we can hear you properly, but there's a little bit noise in the voice. So is it possible to reconnect again, once again, for my last questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, alabiliriz. And okay. Now, şu anda canlı olarak Stockholm 57. Those are the live footage coming from Sweden, coming from Stockholm. The conference started today, this morning, with different subjects, with different kind of meetings, workshops together. So, namely, safeguarding our common home, the name of one of the meeting. Waste management is also very important. A dialogue with UN heads of agencies. I'm reading the program of today. The UN system commitment to advancing the human rights to a healthy environment. This is an important subject also as well. Nature-based restoration and multi-purpose use of rangelands. This is another meeting. One more, economy and finance for a just future on a planet. This is other label headline from the meeting. There will be also some leadership dialogue meetings during the conference. It started today and it will go on tomorrow. And this is the live footage coming from Stockholm. As I told you, one of the speakers is on the scene and is talking, and is coming directly from the UN's social media accounts. Okay. Now we go to Ankara once again. Okay. Dear Mr. Ambassador, okay, I was reading the headlines of some meetings, and it's a very intensive program as far as I can understand. So how, my last question for the conference, how Sweden made a, preparation maybe for that conference? Because we got together with Mr. Istanbul Council of Sweden, Mr. Eriksson. We were together, and also there was UNDP's representative, Miss Winton. We were together, and they talked about us the conference. So I think in each country you had those kind of events. You organized those kind of events. So how was the preparations for the conference, sir?
I mean, one example of these kind of preparations being national dialogues where UNDP has been actively involved, and there was this for Turkey. There was this dialogue in Konya, which also was linked to the National Climate Summit that was held, and those national dialogues was an important part of the preparations. But then there's also been informal working groups preparing this kind of leadership dialogues, and of course we have tried in various ways also to reach out to, as I said, young people, civil society. It's so easy that these kinds of conferences sort of get stuck on a kind of official level, and that's necessary. After all, you need to have governments and parliaments to take decisions, but we need to address the climate change, loss of biodiversity, pollution, the destruction of the oceans. We need to engage that in a way where, in a democratic way, where all voices are listened to. And I think, I mean, what people like Greta Thunberg and, I mean, young climate activists, or female ones that I've met in Turkey, what they have to say is essential, and we need to use this kind of processes, as we have done, Stockholm 50, to give them the opportunity to tell us their opinion, and then we need to actually try to learn from them. So that's one of the clear ambitions that we have had in the preparations here, to have this broad approach, and of course scientific-based approach as well. And after all, scientists are increasingly telling us, giving us the message that, well, as the UN Secretary General has said, it's code red for humanity.
Okay, it's really important for our children, our future of the planet, for our survivor, maybe for our existence. So congratulations for all the participants. From the official page of the conference, we can see those phrases. It's time for bold choices. It's time for urgent action, of course, and it's time for a better future on a healthy planet. Those are the messages coming from Stockholm Plus 50. It's a really important step, one more step for the humanity served. Thank you so much for the conference. We are okay, but there's another agenda, there's another important headline for European Union. This is called Green Deal, European Union's Green Deal, and as a member of European Union, how Sweden evaluates approaches to that special deal, special program process?
Well, first of all, I mean, the European Union is playing a major role, should do so, and as a dedicated active member, Sweden certainly tries to energize that effort in the European Union to address climate change and the environmental threats that we see around us. EU has been a key actor in making the international negotiation process moving forward, taking bold steps and increasing the ambitions. I mean, very recently the EU took the decision that we need to reduce climate gases emissions 2030, not by 40%, but by 55%. And that was a way to respond to what we hear from scientists, that the previous estimations, what was needed, were too weak. Now we need to act faster. So that's a goal set, and then from this EU has developed the so-called Fit for 55 package, which includes measures to reach this goal. I mean, one very important factor in the EU's approach to the fight against global warming has been the emission trading system that increasingly has been improved, and it means that first of all, the principle that the polluter pays what has been introduced, that in its turn creates incentives for various actors to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases. So that's one important the mechanism created. In that same spirit, I mean, you need to put a price on carbon emissions. Sweden was one of the first countries that actually started to tax carbon emissions 1921, and that's also now feeding into this. And so when the European countries in this way both try to create incentives to drive the reduction of the greenhouse gases through making it more expensive to emit, then we also, of course, must make sure that this doesn't mean that companies are just moving to another continent and continue to emit greenhouse gases. So there's this in the EU Green Deal, there's also this envisaged mechanism called border adjustment mechanism, which will also encourage, stimulate countries outside the European Union to create similar systems where there's a price put on the emission of greenhouse gases. And in our case, just as an illustration, in our case, this has been quite efficient. We have seen over the years that the Swedish greenhouse gases, the emissions have been reduced since 1990 with 27%. And at the same time, the economy has grown with 85%. So there's actually a possibility to both act against climate change and see economic growth, benefiting citizens, fighting poverty, that this actually could work in parallel.
Your mission is in Turkey, sir. So how do you see the Turkey's position for that Green Deal process?
Well, first of all, I think it was a very positive step taken by Turkey last autumn, just before the so-called COP26 conference. I mean, the conferences that are managing the climate negotiations. Just before that, Turkey decided to announce its decision to ratify the Paris Agreement. And I think that was a very, very positive step, giving kind of a momentum to the coming conference. Additionally, I see and hear when talking both with government officials and representatives of the private sector that the EU Green Deal is taken seriously and seen as a kind of system framework that Turkish companies, certainly companies in other parts of the world as well, can adapt to, and in that way also be part of a broad European effort to be innovative, to find new green solutions rather than try to sort of slow down and being in waiting mode. So I feel that Turkish actors, public and private, have responded very positively to the EU Green Deal. And I mean, there's also been this high-level dialogue on climate that was launched between the European Union and Turkey quite recently. I think the first round was held in September, and this is exactly how I think the EU member states like Sweden and a country like Turkey, and also being a candidate country to the European Union, should act together. The Green Deal sets kind of a framework that we now all can relate to, including Sweden and including Turkey.
Exactly. It's an important transition period for Turkey also, and those are difficulties maybe, but we are on the road. So we are going positive altogether. My last question will be about the public opinion, the people of Sweden. You know, public awareness is very important for the climate issues, climate problems. How do you see, what is the importance of subjects like, you know, climate change, global warming, zero waste in the daily life of Swedish people, sir?
And here, let me go back to where we started with the history. The 60s, when I grew up or became a teenager, then we increasingly saw public opinion on environment moving forward, and that was driven very much by civil society and by the sort of intensive debate where also experts inside and outside Sweden told us about the risks with the DDT, the risks with the dumping waste in landfills and nature. So the starting point for our actions was exactly there. Free debate, civil society, mobilization. That created pressure on politicians who became increasingly ambitious in terms of legislation. Eventually, we moved into a situation where we had clear targets set on various issues. We need to stop emitting this, we need to reduce this, and legislation, and also economic incentives were formulated by politicians accordingly. Then the private sector has been a major driving force here. But first of all, when public opinion increasingly changed, saying that, well, we can't continue like this, we are destroying our planet, private sector realized that they risk losing customers if they would continue in the old way. And I mean, I just saw a statement by, for instance, the head of EU:n, Helena Helmersson, saying that it's becoming climate positive by 2040, which is their ambition. That's about showing leadership and cooperation. We need it, the world needs it, and our customers want it. And the same is said by so many others. And this kind of mindset in the private sector has been beneficial in several ways. First of all, it's meant that we have mobilized the innovative capacity of the various companies. One example of that is the now initiative to produce fossil-free steel, green steel, or whatever you would call it, and that's an initiative now launched in Sweden. We have also, in this way, seen companies coming together and making, in the various sectors, in transport and mining or whatever, formulating action plans together. And what I hear and what we hear constantly from them is that they see here their business opportunities. You should be proactive in the green transition out of the pandemic, implementing the Agenda 2030 and reducing poverty in the world. And in that way, by leading rather than by sort of putting the foot on the brake, then the private sector contributes in an extremely important way. And I think this goes back very much to what you asked about, public awareness. When you have the public awareness, when people are freely expressing their opinions, acting as customers, then you also unleash the innovative force in the private sector. And I think that's exactly where we are right now. We are not doing enough. I mean, no country, certainly not Sweden, not Turkey, not the countries meeting in Stockholm, but with this pressure and with companies taking the lead, and politicians acting accordingly, setting the rules of the game, then progress is possible. And again, I need to come back to what the King said in his speech. We don't have 50 years more. And Olof Palme said something similar, 1972, that we are running out of time. And now we are really running out of time, and particularly on climate change. So we need to talk with each other, we need to discuss to be able to find solutions, but at the end of the day, now what needs to be done is implement the measures agreed and speed up improve nationally defined contributions to the fight against climate change, create the economic incentives with taxing carbons, and encourage the critical voices, the ones telling us that we should act more rapidly. Let the scientists tell their story, and let's act jointly, multilateral cooperation to fight global challenges.
Sir, those were really important messages from the Ambassador of Sweden to Turkey, High Excellency Staffan Herrstrom. Thank you so much to be together with us again in that very special day. Congratulations for the conference. Happy birthday, happy anniversary again, 50th anniversary. It's really important. Maybe you can say that for like last words, we are the last generations to deal with that problem. So as the king said, stated also, so you mentioned this. So those are the important, crucial days, sir.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay. Thank you so much. Maybe
Thank
see
you very
you
much.
soon in our studio. Let's be together. Let's keep in touch.
We'll be happy to join you again. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me.
See you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Evet, Staffan Herrstrom'le birlikteydik. Türkiye'nin İsveç Büyükelçisi, İsveç'in Ankara Büyükelçisi. İsveç'te bugünlerde bu sabah başladı. Bugün ve yarın devam edecek. Stockholm 50 toplantısı var. Canlı görüntülerle birlikte yine ekranlara getiriyoruz. 50 yıl önce ilk toplantı, çevre başlıklı dünyadaki belki de ilk resmi, ciddi toplantı. Resmi ismi şöyleydi: United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. Yani çevre için Birleşmiş Milletler'in konferansı şeklinde 50 yıl önce 1972'de oldu. Ve 50 yılın ardından bugün tekrar liderler, sivil toplum temsilcileri, akademisyenler, gençler, üniversiteliler, medya mutlaka bir araya geldiler ve dünyanın geleceğini konuşuyorlar. Zaman giderek azalıyor. İsveç kralının da altını çizdiği gibi, Kral Gustav'ın da altını çizdiği gibi, Büyükelçi Herrström'ün de altını çizdiği gibi zaman çok fazla yok. Artık 10'lu yıllarla, 20'li yıllarla ifade edilen dönemlerden bahsediyoruz. Hedefler konuldu. Dünyanın geleceği için işte 1,5 derece hedefi var. Paris İklim Anlaşması bir taraftan, COP toplantıları bir taraftan ve tüm bu yoğun gündem içinde Stockholm 50 ki görüntülerini arkadaşlarımız hazırladılar. Son derece büyük bir organizasyon. Çok geniş katılım var. Türkiye'den de çok sayıda katılım var. UNDP'nin ve Birleşmiş Milletler'in de desteklediği bir toplantı, bir takım konserler, sanat gösterileri de mutlaka yer alacak. Konuşmalar, mesajlar önemli her zaman olduğu gibi. Ama buradaki alınan kararların, ortaya çıkan vizyonun hayata geçmesi daha da önemli. Çünkü çok fazla zamanımız yok. Yani gezegenin zamanı olmadığı için üzerinde yaşayan türler olarak bizlerin de yok. Sadece insanlar değil, o biyoçeşitlilik, türlerin korunması, nesli tükenme tehlikesi altında olan bitkiler var, hayvanlar var, türler var. Bunlarla ilgili de çok fazla sayıda toplantı olacak. Çok fazla sayıda işte workshop, atölye çalışması ve konferans olacak. Tüm bunlarla birlikte bugün ve yarın çevre başlığı altında dünyanın gözü kulağı Stockholm'de. Biz de bugün önemine istinaden İsveç'in Türkiye Büyükelçisi Staffan Herrström'le bir görüşme yaptık. Karşılıklı bir röportaj yapmış olduk ve böylelikle bugünkü yayınımızın sonuna geldik. Yarın da Stockholm 50'nin ilk günde neler oldu, neler yaşandı ve yarının programı ile ilgili de mutlaka çevre günlüğünde yine haberlerimiz olacak. Çünkü çevreye dair dünyanın neresinde olursa olsun bir gündem varsa Çevre TV bunu takip ediyor ilk günden itibaren sizlerin de katkısıyla, desteğiyle. Çok teşekkür ederiz. Bizden bugünlük bu kadar. Önemli bir röportajdı. İsveç Büyükelçiliği ekibine de tüm bu organizasyon için teşekkürlerimizi sunalım. İstanbul Başkonsolosluğu'nda da bir toplantı olmuştu. Büyükelçi Başkonsolos Eriksson ve UNDP temsilcisi, müküm temsilcisi Louisa Winton'un ev sahipliğinde bu toplantıya ilişkin hem sohbet hem bilgilendirme yapılmıştı. O toplantıdan da görüntüler şimdi geliyor ekranlara. Dünyanın gözü kulağı söylediğimiz gibi aynı zamanda İsveç tüm büyükelçiliklerde, başkonsolosluklarda, başka ülkelerde de bu toplantıyı tekrarladı. Stockholm 50'yi duyurmak için ve bu toplantı bugün itibariyle gerçekleşiyor. Hem Birleşmiş Milletler'in sosyal medya hesaplarından hem Stockholm 50'nin, Stockholm artı 50, plus 50'nin hesaplarından da canlı olarak takip edebilirsiniz bu özel günü, özel toplantıyı ki şu anda da arkadaşlarımız ekranlara getiriyorlar. Evet, bizden bugünlük bu kadar. Yarın aynı saatte Çevre Günlüğü'nde yeniden buluşalım. Hoşça kalın.